No AI was used in the making of this artwork.
Hello, Robert. Welcome back. It's another episode of Watercolor Fire Damage. I'm your host, Dan Marek, artist. This is the show where I paint a watercolor and then I light it on fire. We're gonna be painting the moon today because I look at it all the time and wonder what's going on with that thing in the sky. Is it made of cheese? Is it real? Did we land on it? It seems like there's been 50 million once-in-a-lifetime events that have happened with the moon since I've been a kid. We're gonna get the full moon, the whole circle, the whole pizza pie. The moon's pretty mysterious, so I went with purple as a color. You know, when you go through color theory class, the teacher gets mad if you say purple and not violet. So my old art teacher, Miss Fuentes, would be very upset. So today we're starting with a wet and wet technique, as always, because with these backgrounds, you want them to kind of explode with color. So I'm painting the whole background with water here, except the moon, because I don't want any of the color to run into the moon. I'm painting on Arches cold press paper. It allows me more time to work with this wet and wet technique. When you work on hot press, it dries really fast. I'm starting out with ultramarine blue here, and we're just taking the pigment and getting a lot of it in this big brush and then just squeezing and pinching the pigment out so that it drips into the background. And we get these really cool moments where you just kind of watch the paint itself. I'm also using dioxazine purple. Got the perp going on here. So as you can see here, I've already made a mistake. I've dripped some color straight onto the moon, which I want to be white, but it's okay, because I'm just gonna use a paper towel and I'm just gonna soak it up. And even though you can see the mistake right now and it seems really glaring and obvious, just pay attention to this area as the painting progresses. You'll be shocked at how little you can notice this later. Just like spending a lot of money when you're dating a girl, she'll barely even see it later on. And then I just want to speed up the video here a little bit so you can see just the colors expand and do their thing. I have a general idea in my head of what I want to be doing with this painting, which is creating kind of a diagonal line going through the moon, where the full moon is. So I've got kind of this idea where I'm going to be vignetting and making the upper left and the bottom right corners black or as dark as I can go. And then I want to have this kind of union of opposites with red and blue meeting and kind of having these purples. I know that in color theory, blue and orange are the technical color opposites, but I went with blue and red because from a conceptual standpoint, blue and red makes more sense. You got blue, which is cold. You've got red, which is hot. Watercolor, fire damage. The only opposites I can think of that are orange and blue would be Goku and Vegeta. So I'm just taking my biggest, wettest brush here and I'm just tapping it against a smaller paintbrush to get those splatters on the background. And it's a Christmas miracle that I did not somehow get any spatters on the moon. I don't know how I did that. And I'm finally coming in here with a paper towel and just cleaning up the pigment that is on the tape. If there's any wetness sitting on that tape, it can run back into the piece and ruin it, which is awesome. So I lost a lot of the footage while I was filming this. You're welcome. And we didn't get to see some of the first parts of me painting the red here, the alizarin crimson in the background for the second wash, but that's okay. We're able to see a lot of the rest of it. And I'm gonna be using Payne's Gray now and adding that to the two corners to get that diagonal motion going through the piece. So Payne's Gray is a pre-mixed color. It's a cool gray, so it's got some blue in it. I could have mixed my own gray here, but I just wanted to use Payne's Gray because it's a very dark gray and I'm trying to replicate space here. So this is one of those situations where I would say Payne's Gray is just fine. And getting a bunch of that pigment in my paintbrush and then squeezing it out to plop it into place. And then I want to come in later with my brush and kind of direct some of the edges. My goal here is to have areas that kind of feel chaotic and they kind of feel like they did their own thing. And then there's other areas where I'm kind of coming in and intentionally creating a gradient that's like kind of like a smooth band of color or something that has a little bit more of a hard edge. But the goal here is to keep that pigment flowing and to be continually getting more thick as I add the pigment so that I don't get cauliflowers. I want to keep the background moist. 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 That word sounds so gross, but it's so important when you're doing watercolor. As I'm working on this background, I want to get as many different layers as I can get in as possible before the piece starts to dry. And you can see I'm using a little magic spray bottle here to keep the background wet and to also help some of those colors get softer edges as I work on the piece. So I added some more streaks of alizarin crimson here, going up in that diagonal direction, just kind of giving the piece a sense of movement in the background and a sense of purpose. So I'm just continuing to add elements of calligraphy here into the background to kind of make the colors feel really energetic and have a flow to them. And then I'm coming in with the alizarin crimson, and you get to see how the alizarin crimson interacts with the Payne's gray, and it's like this really satisfying moment. And if I come in and I try to control this and I try to overdo it, I will ruin it. So getting to this point in the piece, what you're not seeing is the countless mistakes that I've made on other watercolors in the past, where I push something too much or I overwork something. And there's actually a lot of restraint here that I'm having to utilize in not touching this area and just letting it do its thing. Even though it's not doing quite what I want it to, it's better if I just let it naturally happen. If I just do like a whole wash and it's all just even and it's all one soft edge or one hard edge, it doesn't quite have the feeling of dimensionality, and I don't know how to say it other than just like quality. Like when you have a mix of hard edges and soft edges, warm colors and cool colors, you approach this sense of balance and unity in the piece that is really important to make the piece feel like it's actually designed. So the moon's been on my mind, which is why I did this painting. And it's just such a mysterious object. It's like so weird that it's just like, first of all, it's a sphere, and I know that things generally, you know, in the universe that are as big as the moon end up like a sphere, but you look at the other planets in our solar system, and the next most habitable planet would be Mars. And Mars has got 2 moons, and they have an irregular orbit. They're not perfect spheres. One of the things that's going to be a problem that I was looking at with colonizing Mars is that they don't have a moon like we have. Our moon is super regular. It's very important to our environment. The moon does a good job of protecting the Earth. It kind of sweeps out a bunch of smaller objects that could land and make big craters on the Earth, which is why the moon is so cratered. And it's just so crazy that the moon is about 400 times smaller than the sun, but it's 400 times closer to us than the sun. It's just one of those things I think about, you know, it's interesting. It's just a mystery. It's kind of like, huh. So you can see me sitting like a gremlin on my haunches here in the next wash. I'm mixing up my color palette. This is something I like to do, is I like to leave my color palette the way it is with previous colors on it. This kind of helps you get a paint pigment that is not just from straight out of the tube. And also when you're using a bunch of different colors like this, you use the spray bottle over the top to wake them up, and then you can kind of mix a lot of these colors together and get something that is not fully saturated. You usually don't want to use paint straight out of the tube. You usually don't want to use paint that's fully saturated. So the way to get a color that's not fully saturated is to add its complement. And in this case, we're mixing together that dioxazine purple. We've got a little bit of alizarin crimson. We've got some Payne's gray on there. And then I'm adding in touches of ultramarine blue and maybe just a little bit of the phthalo blue. So my goal with this wash is to just go in and define the major areas of the moon craters. You know, when you look at the moon, you've kind of got this big connected shape. And I started out with a smaller brush, and I thought that, you know, if I did a lot of brush strokes, the wash would dry kind of splotchy, which is usually what you don't want to do with watercolor. But in this case, I thought it would highlight the roughness of the moon. So I went in with the smaller brush, and then I started running into the type of problem that you run into when you're trying to do a piece like this with the smaller brush, which is that the brush is not holding enough water and it's not holding enough pigment, and you're having to constantly go back and remix color. So I decided to just come in and turn this into kind of a wet and wet wash halfway through. And then you get to see what happens here if you use water or a thinner coat of paint after you've already laid a coat of paint down. So I've got my initial coat of paint, and then I come in with water, which is a thinner consistency, and you see the water start to push the pigment back, which is a cauliflower. You'll kind of see here that I'm able to fix this by just going back over the wash and just kind of unifying everything. If I was to leave it, I would get that cauliflower look, which some people really hate, but I think looks amazing when you're using it intentionally in the right spot for texture. So you can see here, after I've went in and I've wetted the entire connected shape of the moon craters, I'm still using that smaller brush because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to grab pigment and I'm trying to vary the pigment like I was doing the first time with the brush strokes, but now I've got this whole connected shape that's wet that I can kind of work in. I kind of wish that I had started by just wetting a shape the first time and then coming in with a brush the second time, but not everyone's perfect, and I'm not a master watercolorist, but I think that art is one of those things that you should always be growing, you should always be changing, you should always be trying to improve. You know, it's really easy to just say, oh, I'm a master watercolor artist, I've been doing this 40 years and I never make mistakes, but I'm always making mistakes. John Cena Sargent, who's a very amazing artist, you probably know him if you're an artist, if you've never heard of him. He's up there with like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and all the other Ninja Turtles. And he said that watercolor is making the best of an emergency. Which is that's really how it feels. It really feels like that when you're painting. So I did learn my lesson here by not necessarily going about the right way of doing this wash, but as you can see, it still turns out pretty good. And now you can see here, I'm getting a real thick consistency of purple because I'm going back into that area that was already wet, and I don't want the cauliflower that I just got earlier. So I want to make sure this is thick. And so I'm going in and just making sure that that paint it's not moving when it's on my palette. So I'm taking that and I'm putting it back into that area where it's still wet, and we're gonna get some of that soft edges color that's gonna move. It's gonna blend a little bit. It's gonna have a little bit of a soft edge, but it's not gonna be ruining the piece by going crazy if it was super diluted and water-like. And what I'm trying to do is go in with that smaller brush and get that feeling that I was trying to get the first time around, which is varying the thickness of the pigment, getting cooler grays, getting warmer grays, kind of mixing up some colors here and trying to add some variation in that big connected shape of the moon. Okay, so I'm painting this bottom crater of the moon. It's very characteristic. It looks like something, but I feel like it's a little too dark. It's a little too dark. What I'm painting right here, it looks a little too dark. So I kind of want to come in and lighten that color. So I'm using my paper towel, and the paper towel, it's kind of interesting. It's like painting in Photoshop and then deleting half of it, like using an eraser that's like 50% opacity and kind of going over it and lightening it. But you can do it with the paper towel in real life. So that was kind of a cool moment, trying that out. And you know, I'm trying to paint the rest of this area, but I feel like it's still too dark. So you can see me here, I'm trying to clean my brush in my untouched holy water. And then I'm coming back in, and it's still too dark. And I'm going back, and I'm cleaning my brush, and I'm getting more of that pigment out. And then I'm coming back, and I'm finally starting to feel like this shade is what I'm going for. I wanted it to be like half to a third as strong as that first connected shape. And so now that I've got that and I'm happy with it, I'm just trying to milk this shade of pigment that I've got in my brush as long as I can. I'm trying to use that and go everywhere on all the little spots of the moon that I want to use without going and getting more pigment or getting more water and messing it up. Okay, so the moon's a circle, right? Or a sphere. So when you're looking at the very middle of the moon, what you're looking at, you're looking straight down on it, like top down. But when you're looking at the sides of the moon, the edges of the moon, what you're seeing is that sphere bend away from you. So that's why in those edges, I'm making the craters more like lines, right? Like they're really, really thin shapes. It's like taking a crater like this and bending it like this. So that what you're seeing is just a sliver of that crater as you're looking at the edges of the moon. So that's why I'm going in and I'm painting the edges more like lines. And then the middle of the moon is like this big shape that you're able to like see. So a fun fact about the moon that I didn't realize, but makes sense, is that, you know, the moon is locked in an orbit with the Earth, right? And so the Earth is pulling and holding the moon, and the moon is having an effect on the Earth. And because of that, they're facing each other. So this orbit is going around like this, right? And the moon, you're never seeing the dark side of the moon because the moon is locked in an orbit. It's being like a magnet. It's being held in place to look at the Earth. So you never see the dark side of the moon, right? And so when you're in the northern hemisphere, it always looks the same when you're looking at it. You know, like the phases of the moon change, but those craters always stay in the same exact spot. And that characteristic crater on the bottom that looks like something familiar. I don't know where I've seen that from before. Interestingly enough, when you're in the southern hemisphere, the moon is flipped. It's upside down. So that's something that I never really quite realized until I traveled and I went to Australia and New Zealand. And that's just something really cool. So that whole crater on the bottom is on the top when you're in the southern hemisphere. So I'm happy with this first wash of the moon, and while I'm waiting for it to dry, I'm gonna go back into the background. I'm gonna wet some areas, those diagonals I got going on, and I'm gonna start adding some more Payne's grade to try to really push the depth of that background, really get another coat on there, really push the richness and the darkness of the spaceness. Okay, so in this next wash, I'm waking up my brush, I'm getting it going, like, come on brush, it's time to work. I'm waking it up in the water, and then I'm getting my dioxazine purple, and I'm adding it to its own little dish so I can really just control the consistency of this purple and get it going. This is just like the Mercury painting I was working on, where I wasn't really sure what level of detail I wanted to achieve on the moon. I wanted the moon to feel pretty detailed, and because the moon's very cratered and there's a lot of texture on the moon, but I didn't want to achieve a level of scientific accuracy where every crater was accounted for. And you know, with something like the moon, scientists have studied it. We've got astronomers that have been looking at it for hundreds of years, and probably every crater is named or accounted for. So it's hard not to work on a painting like this and then have to deal with YouTube comments of some person that is like, you know, you didn't account for crater 6-7. So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to make a decision as an artist. A lot of master watercolor artists will say things like, at this point, after doing a sketch, you need to put away your reference photos and you just need to work from like your heart and your soul and the sketch that you did of the reference, because if you look at the reference, you're just gonna get caught up in the details and the weeds, and you're gonna produce something that's not gonna look good. Having said that, it's the moon. It's the moon. So there's got to be a lot of craters. There's got to be a good amount of detail. So I had a photo reference I was still working off of, and just trying to find that balance between scientific realism, accuracy, and artistic vision. You know, everything's been settled with science at this point, but there is just a certain amount of like romantic mystery about the moon and how pretty it is. It looks different in the sky depending on the seasons and like the atmosphere. So sometimes you can get a moon that has like a blue hue. A lot of times it has a yellow cast to it. You can get red moons, you know, blood moons or whatever they call them, with the atmosphere. There's times where when the moon is on the horizon, it looks huge. And then you're watching it, and like 10 minutes later, as it starts moving up into the atmosphere, it gets to its regular size, which happens from atmospheric perspective and things like that. There was some sort of, I remember having an art teacher in high school that he spent the whole class talking about why the moon would look bigger on the horizon line, because you're looking through more atmosphere and there's some sort of bend to it. I don't quite remember what it was called, but there's just so many things like that that are just interesting. I find the moon very fascinating. So as you can see here, we're just going back in and adding more detail to the surface of the moon. I'm just going in and just trying to kind of create like a sense of texture here. So like we said, like not every single crater is getting highlighted here, but if we give like these dry brush techniques and we kind of go over the surface of one of these washes, we can give that feeling of a lot of detail and a lot of texture by just doing those dry brush rough techniques. So that's what we're doing here. I'm also just going in and kind of highlighting some of the edges of these craters to just get a little bit more of a sense of dimensionality to them. We're gonna go back into that lighter wash area with the very characteristic crater that's at the bottom. And we're just gonna kind of see that I'm adding some more color there. And then I'm actually gonna come in with a paper towel and just kind of streak out and take out some of that color. So that we just have some variation down there. And then I'm gonna be going back in with just a small brush and just adding little bits of detail here. And then this moon's gonna be good. And then the next step is just gonna be to add stars with gouache and maybe do a little bit to the background, but I think we're gonna call it at that point. Okay, here, and so now what I'm doing is I'm adding gouache, and I'm going in and I'm adding stars that I want to have in the background, and I don't want to overdo this, so I'm trying to add the stars sparingly in areas where it makes sense, where there's color in the background or it's really dark. I don't really feel like I need to add a lot of stars in areas where the background is a little bit lighter. And I'm trying to do something that's kind of like a diamond shape. So my goal here is to kind of create, like if the moon is here, I kind of want stars to be going down and then going up above it. So I kind of have like a double pyramid or like a diamond shape that I'm going for. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of like, I'm putting out the dots, almost like a connect the dots coloring book kind of thing. So I'm kind of like plotting out where I want this general shape of the stars to go. And then I'm using a couple different paintbrush sizes here so that I've got like the bigger dots, the bigger stars, and then some of the smaller ones to kind of add some variation there. And then I'm gonna wait for these stars to dry, and I'm gonna come back, and I know I'm not supposed to do another wash, not more than 5 washes, otherwise it might kill the freshness of the watercolor, but I think we kind of already did that. I kind of already pushed the darks really dark. So I'm happy with it. Okay, so is this the 6th wash? This is crazy. I think we're just adding a little bit of detail. That's what this is. It's not another wash. It's not going beyond the 5 wash maximum that we talk about, that we should never go beyond. All I'm doing is using some gouache and adding some details on the moon. Just taking some of those craters and highlighting them, adding some extra interest to the edges, and just spending some time on the moon and trying to make sure it feels textured and rough and destroyed. Like how the moon looks when you're looking at it, right? So we might add a couple stars, but really, I mean, this is it right here. So we're just gonna be untaping this, and then we're gonna light it up, baby, and we're gonna see how it burns. So that's it, guys. That's the moon. It burned away just like everything else in my life, including my last marriage. If you'd like to get prints of this painting, you can get them in various sizes on my website. You can also buy the original ashes, but I'd rather you just watch the next video that I have for you.